room 24 hours a day, right? Everything that happens to you is to see how you can respond as a member of the next level, not as a human. You don't take all these incidents that are thrown at you and try to handle them as you would as a human would do. Like for instance, the retreat group that just left went off and left their gas funds at retreat. Now, the first thing that would come into my mind if I was doing that would be to turn around and go back and get my funds. I would not feel like I had to involve any of you all. We do it too many times. We go, the only time that we would call upon someone else to handle our mess that we were in would be if we were stuck someplace and could not do anything else but car.
Right, the car wouldn't move, or
like one time when we were in Fredericksburg, I believe our car broke down.
And outside Colorado Springs, since we've been at retreat.
Right, we have called for help, but we tried to handle it first, and then when we couldn't, well, we called for help. But we will put this on tape that if the individuals who were in that car, all four of them had agreed to make the phone call, and they made that decision, then that's good. If they didn't, if only one individual or two individuals made that decision, I don't know. We ask for.
In other words, even though it was a wrong decision, we would rather it was made by all four, because we'd just given a lesson to them at retreat about how everybody in the car is a member of the crew. When you're in a circumstance like that, there's no satellite three-person. Everybody there is a crew member, just like everybody who would be working at the lab. And when you're in transit, everybody present is a part of the crew making decisions.
Now, the most important thing is that you understand how to handle that circumstance. If you are stuck, like if you were, I'm repeating myself, I know, but I want it on tape, that if you are out of gas and you can't move, or you have filled up with gas and then you realize you are out of money, then Doe suggested that you ask them, you could leave one individual as a hostage, or you could leave your spare tire or something, but then if they have a flat tire going, it's kind of better to leave somebody.
leave somebody.
Or, something that you have. Your water jug, your salads, whatever they will take. But try to figure out a way to get out of the circumstance honestly, and then they can come on back if you're close enough to retreat like you were, to come on back. It's true we don't like you to have to do that extra driving, but what better lesson is it? You will remember it next time, right? So it doesn't hurt you to do that. And they ended up doing it anyway. Now, this retreat group didn't have procedure to do anything, so they stuck to their guns. They said, we don't have a procedure to take those funds to you. And what did you all do? Suggest they come back, or what? Which they were using their next level mind, because that's how members of the next level would do it. But let's go back to the Amarillo crowd.
Now, wait a second. Let me throw something else in there. Someone suggested, I think, from Amarillo, that maybe the ones at retreat could have met them halfway. That would have been very wrong. First of all, the people at retreat are on call 24 hours a day for the older members who are at retreat. And they wouldn't do anything that they have not cleared through the older members. like two of them couldn't go and meet them. When you don't know that Lynx could come in 5 minutes later and have a task for all five of retreat crew, or call them and have a task for them. So it wasn't right for Amarillo to even consider, or for the people who were in transit to even consider asking that you all meet them someplace. That consideration doesn't even come into the ballpark. That would come in only if Lynx answered the phone and Lynx got instruction to send a couple of you, and then gave that instruction. But that wouldn't come from the students to handle it that way.
Well, converting that to the next level activity, it doesn't make sense to tie up two vehicles on one task, right? It doesn't, and plus the individuals that it would require to tie up. It would tie up two individuals would have to go to meet them, right? That would tie up two more individuals and another vehicle, and then plus the four that are in that particular crash that
and like T said, if they were in a circumstance where they couldn't get out of the problem themselves, then it would be different. But let's say they needed a call retreat because they were in a circumstance they couldn't get out of, like they had no money to pay for their gas, or the car was just completely wouldn't move and they had to make some decision. Then they would want to get in touch with Retreat and see if they could, if Lynx could help them, because in that sense it's an emergency. And they didn't have the phone number, so they would have to then call Amarillo and just say, "Do you have the Retreat phone number? We need it for an emergency. Thank you." And Amarillo can let curiosity kill their own cat. They don't need any involvement in that.
You've had those lessons before. You've forgotten. It's in your memory bank if you want to put it. But the reasoning that the crew up here gave was absolutely right. What if Lynx called and wanted us on a task, and nobody in the car would be gone, plus two individuals? Then that would interfere with any forward motion, and that's good reasoning. Chuck, wasn't it? Okay? When that booger tells you can't do anything right, you can say, "Oh, yes, I can. I've done one thing right." But getting back to what I was saying a moment ago, you all have got to take it seriously. When we say that all of these little incidents happen to you in order for you to prove to the next level that you have enough mind in that you respond more as a member of the next level and less as a human. And the only way to be able to handle those things in that way is to keep your next level mind always alert and try to keep your vehicle under control so that it won't be responding in a human way. It's extremely important that you all learn this. And believe it or not, it can happen. You might think it can't, but it can. And it happens very easily and very quickly once you make up your mind that you want to do it.
I don't know. We did intend for you to have the option to have questions come to Retreat in clarification of tapes that have gone to the main craft. In other words, if you don't understand what the point we were trying to make, or there were aspects of it that left big holes and were very unclear to you, then we do want to still be able to ask you if there are questions. Now, we don't want you to make up questions just in order to have a talk time, but we do want that door still open. There's one thing to mind that we did want to talk about And it's not a big thing, but it's a thing that you ought to understand a little bit more discretion about. There was a slippage meeting where one individual brought up that he'd had to deal with sensuality, and but it was to a degree where we felt like it didn't merit a help wanted meeting. That it would have been better if the individual, because it didn't go so far as the individual couldn't just recognize the problem and stop it, and know not to get caught in such a circumstance as that again. But well, I don't know how to talk about it without getting specific about it, but I'm uncomfortable getting specific about it, and this is the point. You should be uncomfortable getting specific about slippage of the nature of sensuality. It's just like an organization that is out to rid a city of pornography. And so they go and look at all the pages in all the magazines that are pornographic, so that sure they don't miss any, and they know what's on the stands in pornography. You see what we're saying? And we felt like the Help Wanted meeting regarding Tall Odie's problem was an extreme. First of all, he just recognized that that something could have developed from what happened, but nothing did develop. Now, and he should have just made a mental note and say, let's see, procedures are, I sleep with my hands above my waist. I let myself get caught in a half-sleep, half-awake state and touch myself in this way. But to bring it up as a slippage when no masturbation occurred, or no thing to the degree of being a serious problem. Now, not that Tall Odie shouldn't take it as a serious problem, but there are certain things, and this is one of those areas, that we felt like the group almost indulged in sex in the Help Wanted meeting, mental sex in the slippage meeting, because they talked and talked and talked about this sensuous problem and how to approach it, and the meeting was pages long. To us, 2 or 3 comments could have been made, even if he felt like he had to bring it up. Then a couple of people could have said, I thought we had a procedure that we sleep with our hands above our waist, period. Or you know that you can't let yourself lose your consciousness long enough to be threatened with such a thing as that, and then drop it. That's the end of that meeting, because nothing actually went that far. Now, from Tall Odie's own personal standpoint, or anybody else that's caught in that circumstance, he should consider it very serious, but he should just simply drop it. A lot of times you, in certain problem areas, by not dropping them, you're inviting further thoughts and entertaining, almost inviting more.
Like telling dirty jokes.
Yes, it's like telling dirty jokes. It's like saying, I'm not really into dirty jokes, and do you want me to? Let me tell you some of the dirty jokes I've heard recently, because they were terrible.
This is why I don't like
You see what I'm saying? And I can't stand dirty jokes. So let me tell you a half a dozen dirty jokes that I've heard recently. Now, can you see how wrong that is? Can you see how wrong that approach would be? Now, if I hate, because sensuality is of the kind of thing that can start the senses being active. It's just like telling someone about how delicious something was, and they're all hungry. And you're getting all their juices flowing because they're thinking about that pizza with pepperoni, and they haven't had anything all day, and one thing they haven't had for years was the pepperoni pizza. And yet you're telling them that pepperoni pizza is wrong for you to eat.
But it's so delicious.
But you see what I'm saying? But yet you sit there and tell them about that pepperoni pizza. It doesn't make any sense.
You attract all kinds of vibrations to you when you prolong something like this. First, like Doe said, it was not a slippage. And this goes to your question, Arthody, of defining a slippage, right? What is a slippage? A slippage is when you do something against procedure. Do something against what you have promised to achieve. But if you think about it and you catch yourself, that isn't a slippage. No, I don't know how more simple we can put it. But if you think about kicking somebody but you don't kick them, that is not a slippage. But then you try not to allow that thought to come.
You can consider it a slippage.
Right.
But keep it to yourself and recognize that you were wrong by letting those thoughts even linger that long, or finding yourself in waking up in this position, you're in your bed. You know, it's like we have a procedure not to sleep on your stomach or with your hands in certain positions. But if you wake up on your stomach and your hands are in certain positions, you can write a slippage note and have a 4-page help-wanted meeting? No, it doesn't make any sense. What you do is quickly go over procedures in your mind and recognize where you were wrong, how you could be more keen in programming your vehicle when you're down, how you don't sleep so hard as to get in certain positions, and so forth, and then forget about it. And get to that forget about it part quickly, because otherwise you're just wallowing in a danger area, which has no value to wallow in it.
Does that answer your question? Can you come up with something that isn't?
Were you talking like nail chewing and things like that, fingernail chewing?
No, I'm talking more along with yours.
Okay.
An individual does something and you feel irritation. You go, I gotta get rid of this irritation. And it's,
Is that a slippage? That is not a slippage.
No.
It's a slippage if you say, if you shout at the person, that's a slippage.
Yes.
You give in.
Or if you give them even a dirty look and they see it and you have vented it, then you have entered into a slippage of not that you are asking for help, because you don't have enough control in that area. You have vented it. When you have not vented it, then consider it your own slippage and keep it to yourself and make strong impression that way and get out of it. Get rid of the thought quickly. A lot of times the faster you can recognize where you were out of procedure and drop it, the better off you are than in just thinking over all this and I've learned that for so long. I don't know why. Why can't I learn? I've been working on this for years, and you sit there, and the next thing you know, you've had another slippage because you've gone on a downer, and then that leads to another one. And so just be more systematic. Go in and type in the instructions that apply, and get the reading, and make an imprint, and that's the end of it.
How would you all like it if every time we had to correct you all because of a broken procedure, we went on a downer? We would be on a downer all the time, and we would never move forward. And here you are 36 of you, right? And each of you have got to protect your own self from going on downers and correct your own slippages. In other words, you are striving to be perfect. Perfect meaning that you can go through each day with the procedure on your mind, out in the open, and you don't say, well, I thought about that. I don't know why I didn't do it. Because that doesn't help you one bit. Now, it's time that you get that foresight a little bit stronger than have so much hindsight. Is that what they call it? In other words, you want the pendulum to change, and you want to actually think Sherlock Holmes, and Dr. Watson, look how they used to think and work out their little solutions to things, and then they would come up with an answer. Believe it or not, you all have a better ability to do that, because your minds are really greater than their minds. The only thing is that you have not learned how to exercise it totally. And in a sense, if we had written down on a piece of paper, now we want you to do this lesson, and that is, before you do any action, you have to do step 1, step 2, step 3, and list those things there. But if we did do that, that would be how human teachers do to human children, or human students, right? Members of the next level don't do it that way, doesn't do it that way. In other words, they present the problem to you, and it's you as an individual that takes that problem and make it work, or put it in action, whatever you do to it. In other words, a member of the next level does not make you sit down and memorize everything. We say to you, study the procedure, study how to do it, consciously work on it, but we do not have you. We do not stand there and do as a human teacher does. The thought that came into my mind is, if we could do it, we would put all this on tape and play it while you're asleep at night, so that it would enter your subconscious mind, and then you could listen to it in the daytime, and it would work just beautifully. But it doesn't work that way in the next level. This isn't the task that you are to be doing at this time, to be sleeping while you're supposed to. You don't grow a good mind in that way. A human grows a good brain. He accumulates knowledge in his brain by sleep learning. But a member of the next level has to consciously do it.
Well, that's the only way you can apply next level mind, and it would be trying to take a shortcut. If we put a next level mind information on a tape and then tried to feed it to your subconscious, you wouldn't be applying any effort. And what you come here for? To learn to apply effort.
Strength, to get strength.
It's like we know the difficulty that you have. If you break it right down to biology, you have a task of getting control of a vehicle and not permitting it what it wants to do and what it has been programmed to do for generations. And you're asking it in a few short years to, or you're forcing it in a few short years to stop all of that action and all of those desires. It still keeps bringing them up, but you won't let it do any of those things, and you even clamp the door on its speaker system more quickly and more quickly every time it tries to talk. In other words, we know how difficult the task is, and yet we also know that that's why you're here, because the fact that the task is very difficult is in your favor. And not one of you have an easy vehicle. Not one of you have an easy vehicle. If you think you have an easy vehicle to conquer, it's because you're blinded to the areas you need to work on. And that's the truth. That's the gospel. Because all of you have vehicles that are extremely difficult to keep under control from a next level point of view. Even though certain ones of you have areas that aren't as difficult as others have in those areas, but you all have your areas that are extremely difficult, and you just don't have that much
none of you have that advantage over others. Any advantage that any of you has is an advantage of application of effort. Because the effort you apply is yours. Is your choice of applying next level energy, effort against your difficult vehicle. And if you approach that in a lethargic way or an apathetic way, or you, let's say you apply good effort for a while, and then you get tired of it, or you're in a weakened condition, so you don't apply good effort for a while, then pretty soon your vehicle will catch on to that. And it'll wait for those weak times. It'll catch on to your weak times, and it'll hit you at those weak times, because it has learned that it can hit you at those weak times. Do you understand that? The hardest thing you have to do, and probably the most important thing you have to do, is to learn how to be consistent in your conscious effort with that vehicle, and learn where the weak times are and how to cover your bets on the weak times, whether it's when you're awakening in the morning, or after a long ride to retreat, or after getting home from an out-of-craft task, whatever it is. Learn where the weak times are, and learn that that's when you have to apply extra effort. Because then only can you be consistent. Because the ups and downs becomes a habit of its own. Or the weak areas and the weak times and strong times becomes a pattern of its own, and begins to build a pattern where those genes learn that they can express themselves not as often as they'd like, not as they used to, but once in a while. And they have learned that they can even learn the signals of when they can start to express them. And those signals being the indications they get that you're in a weakened condition, or you're in a half-awake condition, that you're not really on guard.
First, everything isn't as bad as it seems. In other words, one of these days you will be looking back at all this and you will think, I wonder why I felt like it was so serious when I was going through it. Let's use the lesson that occurred just recently about QCAR. And the individuals who were involved in it could have felt like we didn't know all the facts. If we'd known all the facts, then we wouldn't have blamed just a couple of individuals. And but the thing of it is, all that is too serious. We don't blame anybody. We took an opportunity and to teach you all a lesson. It was not handled the proper way. But should the two individuals who had the heaviest lesson feel like they were put into a position where they were blamed to something,
They'd have to defend a position.
or defend themselves, or should they say to themselves, well, I got a lesson, I want to learn it? In other words, you need to, the seriousness of the whole thing, of every lesson that you receive, is to learn the lesson involved, not the feelings, the personal feelings involved. You're responding in a human way when you do that.
That's right.
You are.
Or if you think we're seeing so-and-so in a bad light, where all we're doing is a mistake was made, or certain mistakes were made, and that gave the whole class a chance to see that as an opportunity to learn some lessons.
And it doesn't have to be made right. In other words, we don't have to know your side of the story, the person involved. What you need to do, if you think you have to give us your side, then you have missed the lesson totally. Can you understand that? So
Because you're just seeing it as we misinterpreted you, or we saw you wrong. You made it a personal
thing, and it's a human reaction. So now what do? Go on about it? Because you tried to defend yourself, and Links is turning the tables on you and saying you shouldn't have done that. What we're saying is, learn that you are capable of still responding in that way on a human level, and correct it. This was what that whole tape was about, that we spent an hour and a half this last time talking about correcting the things that are your weakest. And if your weakest things are exposed to you, then be thankful. At least you don't have to figure out what they are. And if you hang around me long enough, you'll find out what they are. And
If you don't misinterpret them.
that's right. You want to take those lessons. Here you, when things begin to bombard you and you're doing things to because older members have asked you to do it, and you do the best you can, and then lessons come out of that. Why do you want to feel badly about it? The only way you can't grow is to sit in a corner somewhere. Lagodi said one time he what is it? He wouldn't something about not he wouldn't know what to do by not getting rest, keeping his mouth shut or something. I forget the words, but his mind wants to learn. Do we blame him for wanting to learn? But does he take the correction that we give to him and throw it back at us as though, but you don't understand my circumstance. I was thinking this way. As soon as he does that, we throw it back at him and say, that isn't the right kind of note to write. Rewrite it as a member of the next level.
If understanding, don't forget, in order to understand someone's point of view when they did something wrong, is to enter into the same point of view with them. In other words, is to try to, can humans understand what you're doing? Can you understand humans? In order for you to understand humans, you would have to lower your vibration way down to do things on the basis that they do them. So you shouldn't understand them. You don't want to understand them. You want to see them as something different, which, by the way, before we forget about it, we read on some slippage notes or help wanted meetings that people are using the word plants talking about humans. That is not our intention. We have given you the understanding, but you are to not say, I had a poor response to a plant today. and that appeared many times on these notes, and that's very inappropriate. In other words, that's a slang in our eyes, and it's a very inappropriate one. Furthermore, if things go as we hope they will go in a very short time, Rick Cody might be sitting in on some of your help wanted meetings. And if you're in the habit of calling humans plants, you're going to have a hard time explaining that one to Rick Cody, because you're not going to explain it to him. We don't want him understanding plants as you understand plants. But you could say human, as you now, as you did before, say I had this difficulty with this human, because he knows that kind of talk any more than you're not going to. And you can, in your help wanted meetings, if he was present, say that's not the way a member of the next level is to act, speaking of yourselves as members of the next level, but that isn't to explain to him that you have come into the knowledge that you came from the next level.
You don't catch him up
You don't say, well, you have to respond as a member of the next level because that's where you came from. You know, I mean, there are certain areas that you should know are not appropriate to hit his ears or his eyes, any more than he would know where retreat is, or know phone numbers, or he can't read, and he's not going to be reading any books.
Or listening to any of these tapes.
Or listening to tapes. He's going to simply have the privilege of coming in once in a while, as Lynch designs it, for help wanted meetings and
Slippage meetings.
Isn't that help wanted meetings?
Right.
Is there a
Just
difference?
wanted to, well, they call them sometimes slippage meetings, and I wanted to make sure that they understood it. Don't you?
Is there?
Isn't it? Never mind.
Request to help wanted meeting, difficulty, such and such.
Oh, but in the help wanted meetings, you bring up slippages, right?
But we hardly ever have anymore.
Oh, help wanted meetings? Oh, now you have mainly slippage meetings. Okay, slippage meetings. But like we said, he can sit in on some of those, and
If his schedules permit, he might take some consuming with you, but this will be our design. But you will have to be very much on your toes as to what he is aware of and what he is not, without making him feel like you're hiding things from him.
Well, the thing of it is, you would not talk to him about what he has done. If he begins to talk about it, you have to say, I'm afraid I'm sorry, but we have a procedure that we're not to discuss this with you. I'm sorry.
I think if you could even remind him it's a procedure that existed when he was in the class, that you don't talk about the past and experiences you've had out there.
And you don't catch him up on where you stayed and all the things that
you can't listen to him catch you up, and you don't catch him up.
Rhodey and them had to listen to about where you've moved to and where you've been and all that, which is not procedure, right? And you don't catch him up on any information that you have come to know. In other words, all we told him when he made contact with us was that he could sit in on some of the meetings once in a while if he wanted to, and that was all. And we were thinking of the help wanted meetings and the slippage meetings at the time.
Let's get this in proper perspective so that you all understand. Riccotti got in touch with us and said, I can't fit in this world. I really feel like I need some help. Is there any way that you can help me? And we said, we cannot help you in California and to take on any responsibility of correspondence or trying to help you with lessons in that way. If you, the only thing we can do for you is if you wanted to move to an area where our class is and get a job, get your own living quarters, take care of yourself, that once in a while we would let you come to a limited amount of sit in on a limited amount of meetings and have a little contact in that way. And that's all that we have said.
Right. At the time, you all were having help wanted meetings, and then he refused to come in. He's changed his mind. And now over a month has gone by, maybe longer than that, I don't know. And then he decides to come, which without even contacting us. We didn't know about it until he was already on his way.
Right, took Aunt Dottie by surprise.
And we wouldn't have had him come because we're not having those kind of meetings anymore. But it's too late to do anything about it. But you all do have slippage meetings 3 times a week? Whatever. Huh? Just PRN?
Or do they average 2 or 3 times a week? Or?
So what we'll have to do is work out some kind of system of letting you know when you're going to have it. And you've got to remember, we don't want him caught up on any information that has been already passed.
Would he be during meetings like an observer?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
He doesn't participate. He
No.
can't participate as a member of the next level. He's just sitting in there.
No, he's
And,
auditing.
He's just, he's a solid member, visitor. You've got to remember, he's not going to make any progress in this way. It's too late for him right now. We don't know. We can't judge him. But since he is reaching out to us, like we said, if we had heard from him before his leaving, wherever he left from, just recently, before coming to Amarillo, right where he is now, we probably would not have encouraged him to come.
As far as we know, he has tried to prevent people from being negative toward your class and toward your teachers. And as far as we know, he has himself not been negative in that way. And if there might be some little things he can do for us. We might get some instruction to let him do certain little things for us, and maybe we can give him some comfort in just some association in this minor way. But we're not going to try to catch him up
We
and
can't.
reinstate him in the class. At least that's not our instruction at all.
It would be impossible in my mind, but then shouldn't say that. But I guess my chicken-heartedness was I thought of Adam and how Adam left and wanted to come back, and the Lord wouldn't let him, and he suffered so. And I thought, for Cody, knowing that we were around, and if he had just a little bit of help in the way of the like listening to you all and all the problems that you had, realizing that maybe he isn't as bad as he is, and he might try to help himself better. And this was my theory after we found out it was okay for him.
And he has said that he doesn't expect to be caught up. He doesn't expect to, in his words, he doesn't expect to make it this time. But he just wants some help if we can offer him some help.
So anyway, you all remember these instructions, because we definitely will not include him as a class member. He is only someone that we will give just a little bit of you to him. In other words, just your meetings, and that's it. Okay?
It really is an awfully special arrangement just to be able to do that. One thing, and then we'll stop, that you have got to believe more strongly, and you have got to make your vehicles accept more strongly, because your vehicles do not like to accept it, and that is the ability to change. Your vehicles feel automatically and subconsciously that they are so programmed that the only thing you can do is to try to keep them. You can try to stop them from carrying through certain things, but you can't stop them from doing a certain amount of, giving you a certain amount of trouble in certain areas. And you can't accept that position. Do not accept that position. You've got to accept the position that you can change these vehicles. You can change the genetic structure. You can change the emissions of the vehicles. And don't you let them try to convince you otherwise by just because of their repetitious desires. The thing that your growth is made of is change. What is going to please the next level when you get back is change. How much stronger you became because of this experience, and is that not change? How much you have learned because of this experience, and is that not change? Now, if you accept that you can change, and then you must keep this in your conscious mind. Now, let's take some examples. Something like, let's say you have a tendency, your vehicle gives you a hard time at time to meditate, and it wants to fall asleep. And you've written slippage notes about I keep dozing and falling asleep when I'm supposed to be meditating. To us, that's very, very difficult for older members to understand. How that can happen repeatedly. Very, very difficult for us to understand. And we want it to be very, very difficult for you to understand. And we're not just talking about falling asleep in meditation, we're just using that as an example. If my vehicle wants to fall asleep in meditation, and I have faced that problem, and I have seen that it is serious, I've even asked for help, I have even brought it in slippage, that means the next time I go to meditation, I go on guard, knowing that meditation is going to last only so long as I am totally awake. And at the moment that is threatened, that is the end of my meditation, and I can't have the pleasure of a full meditation until I know I can endure the entire period of meditation without being threatened by sleepiness.
Now this is change. This is approaching something with effort. But to know that I have the problem of falling asleep in meditation and to do it occasionally is a serious thing. Because it means that it doesn't really mean that much to you to conquer it. This is back to what we were talking a moment ago, consistency. Because there are periods during the day when it means everything to you, and you wouldn't think of falling asleep in meditation. But there are periods during that day or that week sometime when you would go to meditation off guard and not be consistent and let yourself begin to doze before you recognize what's happening. And that is not consistent. That means that your desire to exert effort is on again and off again when you want it to be, according to how you care about that, or you wouldn't be doing it. You can say, oh, don't you know I care? I do care. And you can think, they must not know me because I really care. But yes, you care when you're thinking about caring. But you weren't caring when you were dozing. Can you see what we're saying? Your caring is on again and off again when it's convenient to care. So don't size yourself up at the moment of your strength and think of yourself as so caring. Size yourself up when you realize that your caring is on again and off again, and that it's your task to make it consistent. That's all I'm saying.
It's a good point. What can we say to you all to implant in your minds that you are in a classroom and everything you do, you're being graded on? Is that right?
I think sometimes the grading is even more severe by the monitors when no one is there to observe what you're doing. And what the monitor is caring the most about is not what you're actually doing, but what you are, how you are approaching it. Like T asked a moment ago before we start the tape again, T said, what I want to know is, in the craft, what are you thinking about? What do you, as you go about doing things in the craft? And Destody said, well, what I'm thinking about is, I want to do what the task I'm about to do in the most right way, and I want to do it with my classmates in the most right way, and I want it to have happened in the right way when it's finished. And she said, do you approach when you go to the BC by yourself in the same way? Or do you just, is that a time when you just kind of lock into automatic and go through the motions? Or do you consciously, when you go into the BC or when you go into your bunk or when you wake up in the middle of the night, are you right then thinking, for this period of time that I'm awake, I want to have my head in the right place. I want to have only the constructive thoughts. I want to, in other words, everything you do is a task. That's what T reminded you of, that 24 hours a day it's a task. Going to the BC is a task. Brushing your teeth is a task. Dressing yourself is a task. Waking up in the middle of the night for 30 minutes is a task. When there's nothing to do but lay there and rest, it's a task. How do you do it? Where do you keep your vibration?
In the lessons that are given to you individually, because of the way you handle certain things. It's a task on how you receive it. And the only way that you can ever handle things in a way a member of the next level would handle it would be to keep this consciously before your eyes, like you have it written across your forehead.
That it is a task. That every tiny thing you do alone or with someone else is a task.
Then you don't have time to go on downers. You don't have time to be dishonest. you don't have to worry about being dishonest. You don't have to worry about performing wrong. Because if we can communicate with you as though you are a student receiving a lesson and you didn't handle the lesson right, and our place is to let you know that you didn't handle it right, and in the process we may put it on tape so that everybody can learn from your lesson. But why should you feel badly if it's on tape and everybody hears about it? In other words, you are the center of the lesson. You should be honored. But you should feel badly because you cannot, you didn't
that's true.
handle it
You
right.
should be honored.
The spotlight is on
because
you.
the spotlight was on you to teach, not to make you feel bad, but to use that circumstance as an opportunity to teach the whole class a lesson. And don't you like to, why wouldn't you like to be? This doesn't mean you want to go out and make mistakes.
Just to
But,
put the spotlight on you, you know.
But lessons aren't always mistakes. The only reason we would label it a mistake is because it is an opportunity to show you that there's a better way of doing it than the way you were aware of at the moment. And it's only in comparison to that better way that you consider it a mistake.
You have got to remember that what you do not know in these vehicles, you will not know once you leave these vehicles. Can you understand it?
You're not going to regain anything you haven't brought into your consciousness.
That's right. If you have not conquered these lessons, you're not going to know them once you get to the next level. It will not be in your computer. You will still have to learn.
In other words, if we could even take a nice little mop with stardust on it and wave it over you and clean all the negative away, what would be left? What is left is only what you have learned, and what you have learned in your conscious mind. You see what we're saying? And if you haven't learned those lessons, then you'll be very limited if you've avoided them.
Now, there are lots of things that I know that Doe doesn't know, and vice versa. But when I find out that he knows something that I don't know, I want to know it. And he wants to know the same thing. In other words, the reason I'm telling you that is that we are two separate minds. We learn things according to the effort that we have exerted to learn. Now, just because we sit here and give you lessons doesn't mean that each one of you will retain that lesson. It depends upon you as an individual, whether or not you will take this information and think it is serious enough to remember it. You can say, well, it's in my subconscious mind. And if I'm hypnotized, it'll come out.
That subconscious mind is what you will leave behind.
That's right. If you're relying upon that, you're going to lose it when the shell falls off of your body. And now, this is a very important lesson, and this is why it is very important for us, every opportunity that we have to have a lesson come up, we let you all know about it. Because of the fact that, let's use the example again of the cue car, and believe it or not, you all will hear the last of that one day. But we want to use it as
Maybe.
Suppose you had been in the next level. You had come down on a task, and you had cue car. That was the only car you had. And something like this happened. And you had only your resources on how to handle it. What you had in your computers is what I'm calling resources. The way it was handled was not the way a member of the next level would handle it. And so therefore, if you had had this kind of lesson when you were in the classroom like you are right now, you would have learned how to handle it the way a member of the next level handled it. And therefore, when it reoccurred again, you would know exactly how to do it. Now, let's say you didn't have that lesson in a classroom, like when you were in the classroom, and you handled it the way you handled it. Then somebody in the next level, when you come back, when you give them all the information about your task, which you do, you give them a report just like you do us. They would say, well, next time, if this should happen, this is how you handle it. You see what I'm saying? So you would have to learn it eventually. So why not learn it now? But don't forget it. Keep it in your computer so that when it does show up again, you will know how to handle it. This is why we try to cover all these things for you so that you will have it in your computers. We don't do it because we like to do it. We don't like to do it. You don't believe it, do you? But we do want you to know things. We do feel like one day the pendulum will turn the other way, and all of a sudden everything will begin to happen exactly like members of the next level would handle it. Because there are only a few basic things that you need to know. Remember, a long time ago, we used the example of the hourglass and how when more sand gets down into one part of it, then the hourglass I don't remember if we used it exactly in this way, but we used it, let's say that the sand is mined, and a little bit of that sand is, when more sand gets down into one part of it, you have to turn it over, right? And but during the time that all of that sand is down there, it is the strongest, is it not? I mean, not really, but I mean, it makes sense that it's more sand than it is empty space, right? So let's say that as your mind doesn't turn over and drift from one spot to another, but I was using the example of the pendulum changing. Actually, the hourglass isn't a good example. It's more like a, what is it that once it fills up, it turns? I guess the pendulum, right? The weight on the pendulum, wouldn't that be all right? It will turn, and believe it or not, it's just like a pendulum turning. And as your mind gets more into your vehicle, it will change when you have more mind in, next level mind, meaning more of your next level body growing. Now, I'm kind of cutting corners in words, but we haven't changed what we said about the body growing in your vehicle. And I'm just using the next level of mind in a simpler form in talking, if you can understand it. As you get more mind into your vehicle, then you will have more mind in than you have humanness in. Therefore, you will have less, the pendulum won't turn that way because it will be heavier in the next level way. Can you get my picture? Sure. It's hard to put it into words. And but you have to get more of your mind in, meaning doing more of the next level procedures, the thinking, less humanness. Every time you do human responses, it adds a little bit more mind to the human side of it. And it's like, I don't want any of that, my mind going over there to that human mind, you know. So in a sense, you want to protect yourself. And the only way you can protect yourself is to be consciously aware of responses. You see what
Yeah,
I'm
because
saying?
a lot of you still slip back and forth without any distaste.
You walk with like one foot on the curb and one foot on the street, and you walk lopsided.
It's got to become distasteful to you. We've told you that your next level mind comes into your conscious mind, right? Okay. Your humanness also tries to enter your conscious mind, but it tries to sneak in automatically. It tries to just emit something to have you respond in the way you used to respond, just habitually to its emission. In other words, you would just respond automatically. Your next level mind comes in, none of it's automatic. None of it's automatic. You've pulled it in painfully, and every lesson you've learned of your next level mind has come by effort. No effort at all does human mind come in. It takes effort to keep it out, but it comes in automatically. And if it can come in at a moment when it thinks it can emit a thought or get a response in without you noticing it, then there you are, you're calmed, and you have a human response because it's snuck in. Now, what T is saying is, as the more this next level mind comes into your conscious mind, into your consciousness, it should feel good. It should really feel good. And you should like the feeling of that next level consciousness. So much so that when little emissions come from the genetic structure or from the vehicle or from influences that would try to con you in into an automatic human thought or response, that should be very distasteful to you. You should get signals that, that's human. That's not my next level mind. And this is where you really need to get some discernment of sorting out the two and of seeing, that's a human response. That's the way my mind, that's the way this vehicle's brain, because of its genetic background and education and so forth, would have done that. And that's distasteful to me. I can use just that awareness, but I can approach it from a next level point of view. And the only awareness that I might know would be if I learned in the world that a 7815 fit here, then I can use that fact. But how I'm going to apply that to the need to put a tire on this car, I'm going to do it in the next level way, not human way. Do you see what we're saying? If you could get to the point where you would not let those emissions come in automatically, and when they try to come in, they would be distasteful to you, then this pendulum he's talking about would be on the downswing, because you would have so much next level mind in that a little bit of the wrong stuff comes in, and it doesn't mix. It doesn't mix. It can't sneak in. You're still suckers a lot, and you want to get to where you're not. You're still conned easily. When you're not really awake, when you're not really keen, that humanness can still slip in, and only later do you recognize, dadgummit, that was humanness sneaking in there. My teachers just pointed that out to me. I just realized that I had a human response instead of approaching it from the way my lessons have been. Because what is the next level mind in your consciousness? What you have learned in all the series of lessons that you've had from the day we met. And before that.
And if you approach everything with the idea in mind, did I do that right? I hope I did it right. Instead of feeling like what you did was right.
Yes, you ought to. Yes, that's good. Because don't ever trust that you've treated it in the next. Trust that you haven't. In other words, every time you're having a thought or an action, don't trust it. Examine it and say, am I thinking of it in a human way? Is this a human response? Is this a human evaluation? Am I going to handle this in a human way? Or am I only doing it in a way that wouldn't even mix at all with human ways? I'm doing it only as a result of what I've learned in next level lessons.
Another way to think about yourselves, think that each of you have a long string attached to you, and on the end of that string is a kite. And that kite represents your next level mind, or your next level vehicle. Let's put it that way. And every time and now what you're trying to do is bring that kite down into your body. The only way to do it is to pull that string in. And the only way to pull that string in, you can't use your hands. The only thing you can do is use your mind. The effort, not your mind, the effort that it takes to bring in that string. And every time you use your next level, the effort.
Right, and your next level mind.
Your next level mind that you have already in your vehicle, you bring in the string. And after you get all of that together, then once you get that kite into your vehicle, then guess what you'll be?
A kite.
You see what I'm saying?
Fly into heaven. Fly into heaven.
You'll be a UFO. All right, Zodi.
Talk about the inner mind and program your inner mind and
Your subconscious?
Yes, and it's like it's part of us now. We can say it.
Well, but if he's sitting there and I'm talking and I know that he's sitting there and I said inner mind, I'd say program your subconscious.
Believe it or not, we've been talking about this for years.
Yeah.
Program.
We still use words. That's why we don't want you all to coin just one word and stick to them. We want you to use various words. Like we say inner mind, we also say subconscious, we also say genetic structure. We also call that your soul. And we use those terms, we continue to use them so that you don't forget that they all apply. That's why it disturbed me when I saw in several meetings, one right after another, to say I encountered a plant today and had such and such a poor response.
What I was confused about all of it, computer do this, computer do that, computer, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to wake up, I want to...
You're saying and talking to yourself.
Yes, I'm talking to myself. That really is what I'm now calling inner mind.
Yes.
But somehow this programming is so used to responding to computer.
That's okay.
It seems like it's a little bit slower to get used to.
Well, it wouldn't hurt to use, but it wouldn't hurt to enlarge the vocabulary and use inner mind once in a while.
Well, I've been using it exclusively, and I just
No,
noticed
that's
Computer hyphen.
Yeah. Right, sure. Make it enlarge a little bit. Is that ready?
I was just thinking about going through my addresses. It was like thought came to me, was it, gee, I'm getting too close to these humans. And I was thinking, I've got to stop this. I've got to, pull away. I've got to not respond to them. And I thought, well, maybe I should write things and tell them to take me off this text. And no, I've got to fight through this. And I have to stand back from them, and I have to look at them in the right perspective. And just what's been saying, exactly what I have to do. And it was a real, it wasn't a fast, it wasn't a heavy thing or anything. It was just a recognition of my responses to them, and then my fighting it off and getting over it, and trying to see it in the right light, and knowing that if I could wrote you, it wouldn't be right. I wouldn't learn anything from it. And there's evidently exactly what I need.
That's very, very good. And the way you expressed it was very, very good. And there's not a single person who has an out-of-craft task who isn't challenged with that same problem. And even in craft, because what it does is it invites deceit. And in other words, and you don't want that to happen. You don't want to be one person in the craft and another person at your out-of-craft task, any more than you want to be one person at your meetings or when you're on lab duty and another person in your privacy. Because either way, it's dishonest.
It's deceitful. So you do have to make that adjustment. You do have to be a member of the next level and keep that distance and keep that objectivity and keep that conduct, whether you're working with humans, knowing that very well that you have to treat them in a way that will keep them where they need to stay and not have them concerned about whether or not you're an oddball. And yet you can't get close to them. That's very dangerous. And you don't want to see them in such a way that you would be putting them down. It takes a very careful balance. But I think that's why you're there, because you need to learn that lesson. And that's why every person who has that kind of task. Back to what you were saying, Arthody said, just for a moment, I said a long time ago, this was the last thing we were going to say. But another thing that concerned me about being too free with in slippage meetings about the gray areas of slippage, where you haven't actually done anything, but you've thought about it, and if you've considered the thinking about it, slippage. If you bring it up as if to expose it, all too often those gray areas are not under control, and they're really not under control, and it almost encourages dishonesty, because I brought it up and I told you about it, and then I went ahead and I still have those thoughts to deal with. So what am I going to do? Bring it up every time we have a slippage meeting? In other words, I almost make myself dishonest because I have brought it up. I don't want to bring it up. I want to conquer it because it's a gray area. You see what I'm saying? If it's an area where I have actually done something, I have yielded, I have given in to the weakness, I have actually slipped because I lost my temper or I did this and so forth and so on, then that's a different category. But those areas of approaching it where it didn't yield that, if I tell you too much about it, then I've cooked my own goose. It's like hollering, what do they say? Wolf, yes. And I don't want to tell you about it. I'd rather tell you about it when I've conquered it. I don't want to tell you about it while I haven't conquered it, because then if I've told you about it and I'm still dealing with it, then I'm not going to tell you about it the next time, the next time, the next time. I'm encouraging a kind of deceit to build there, a kind of dishonesty to build there. You see what I'm saying?
In other words, if you, what Doe's saying is extremely important, but the thoughts that come into your mind should be like putting dirty water in the milk. You see what I'm saying? In other words, as the thought begins to come in, you should say, oh, get out of here. You don't want to let it come in so much that it even formulates enough that you know what the whole thing is all about. This is when you should stop it. If you feel irritable, you can feel the irritation coming on. And what you want to do is just say, get out. Get out. But you don't really say it. I mean, you think it. In other words, by your changing the train of thought, automatically makes it go away, because you're not allowing it to come in. Sometimes I can feel like something just flies in, and as soon as I begin to feel it flying in, I fly it back out again. I don't even wait to see what they're coming in for.
But see, this is also what I'm talking about, and I'm glad T brought that up, because that helps clarify it. Because a lot of times you will listen to something for a while before it dawns on you that you're listening to it. Well, what good is that to consider a slippage? That doesn't do any good, because I'm going to go on doing that until I have learned to recognize it sooner. Do you see what I'm saying? In other words, when I'm letting a thought come in, and then I'm not even recognizing it, that it's an inappropriate thought, until I think, good night, what is going on? I have let that tape play for 3 minutes or 5 minutes before I even recognized it was an inappropriate tape. What good does it do me to bring that up in the slippage meeting? Right? That would be an extreme downer to me, because I'm going to do that again and again until I learn the earmarks of those tapes and stop them sooner myself.
I could write, slippage note.
Sure, sure.
Every day I could, I'm not saying that.
But the thing you don't want to happen, you see, is to have started a pattern of saying, here, I consider this a slippage, and I want to tell everybody about it. And then what about tonight when the same thing happened, and tomorrow when the same thing happened, but in a different area? And all, you're saying, well, I don't believe I'll tell them about this one. I sure would look foolish in their eyes if I tell them every 30 minutes that or 4 times today that happened. And so what am I doing? I'm making myself become dishonest. I'm becoming more deceitful.
When people, I never did smoke cigarettes when I was in the world, so I only know what I've heard, but I know that hypnotists will tell a person that when you smoke a cigarette, you will get sick at your stomach, or it'll make you nauseated, or something like that. There are certain things that when I hear are a topic that I feel like it's coming into my mind that I shouldn't be thinking about, it will make me sick at my stomach. And I will say, don't want to talk about that. I don't want to think about that. I don't mean talk, but think about that. But I didn't consciously do that to myself. But this is how my vehicle responds. Now, there's no harm in your saying to yourself, that kind of subject nauseates me.
That's right.
It nauseates me.
That's
I can't
right.
stand to think about it.
It's got to become
too painful.
distasteful to you.
And you've got to do whatever it takes to make yourself stop. This is what that other tape was all about. You can write slippage notes for 20 years, and we will be sitting here waiting for you to overcome them. But when are you going to decide to overcome them? We know you've got the slippage note writing down pat.
It's changing.
If you're learning how to write
doing.
slippage notes, you know how to do that. You know how to discuss them. But when are you going to stop doing them?
Right.
That's the thing that will make you grow, boy. Writing slippage notes, talking about the solution, isn't going to do it. Exposing them was very good. You've learned how to expose them very well. But that is not helping you in the right way.
It's even dangerous to expose them. We even knew that when we started these meetings, it was dangerous to expose them, because some went to a great deal of courage to expose them. And then if they failed again in the same area, it could really invite severe dishonesty. Do you see what we're saying? Because they don't want to appear to be the fool. They don't want to appear to be someone who's taking it seriously and telling you that I did this and I'm not going to do it again, and it was horrible. And then to turn around and tell you again a week later, or 3 weeks, or a month later, I can't believe that I sat here and told you that I did this and I wasn't going to do it again, and I have done it again. But to us, they have to do that if they're going to be honest to the chief in their promise. They have to do it. We're talking about not just running a thought away. We're talking about when you give in to something, when you have vented it, when you have yielded to that temptation of whatever it was. That if you don't tell it at the time that it reappears, you're in worse trouble than had you never told it the first time. Because what you've got to do is expose it and make that change. And you made a promise that you would continue to expose it. And you're not worth a toot to anybody if you can't keep that promise. Do you see what we're saying?
Have you kept score? How many times you've broken the same procedure over and over again? I would if I were you. Just see how many times you've broken it.
That's right, and say, good night, this really must not mean anything to me. I'm fooling myself if I think it means anything to me. Because if it means something to me, I wouldn't have let it go. I wouldn't have this many marks down there of having done that repetition.
In other words, you haven't taken it seriously. It's just been another game that we've been playing. We could have gotten Pac-Man or some other kind of electronic game to play if that's what we were doing. But this is serious business. We're waiting for you. The next level's waiting for you. You have a gestation period. Do you want to be born without not having these things accomplished? I hope you don't want to. I hope you want to have them accomplished by the time you are born. It can be done, and believe it or not, it wouldn't take you out. I would give you 5 times, with each time you broke that same thing that you write slippage notes about. If you, by the time you've gone through it 5 times, by the time you got to the 5th time, I believe that it would be a very weak slippage. Can you follow that? The first time it would be very strong, and if you exerted all the effort you could to remember not to do that, and to be consciously aware that every time that person comes into the room, it's going to cause this reaction to me, or under certain such and such a circumstance, I am going to respond in this way, and I want to be aware that I do not want to respond in that way. If you have that in your conscious mind after the first time, and you are aware of it every moment of your life. Now that sounds kind of hard to do, but it isn't hard to do. You can put it like it's written across your forehead, a neon light inside, only you could see it. And you try to remember it. You exert a conscious effort to remember it. Then the second time it happened, you said, I've got to stamp it harder than that. I've got to remember it better than that. And then the third time, the effort that you exert to remember it, it's going to be less and less and less. And by the time it has happened 5 times, by the 5th time, I believe you will have it conquered. That's how easy it is to do.
But don't give yourself 5 times.
Oh no, do it sooner if you can. But I know I had to go through a lot of this. Both of us had to. And we didn't have any more mind then than you all had. We had to grow the same amount of mind that you had to grow. And we aren't anything special when it comes to this kind of stuff. In fact, we're bombarded harder more than you all are. And it was harder for us to do it than for you, but it just took, the only thing we do have greater than you is effort. We have more effort than you all have. But you all can get just as much as we have. But you can't get it by wishing for it or sitting down and expecting it to come to you. But every time you desire to do a procedure right, you are developing effort. Every time you don't do it right, you are developing effort. Every time you do a procedure right, you're developing effort. Every time you get yourself out of a downer, you are developing effort. Every time you prevent yourself from going on a downer, you're developing effort. Every time you move, if you are doing it in the right way, you are developing effort. So you can build effort in every way that you can. Every time you act like a human, you're not developing anything. So the only thing to do...
You're almost losing ground.
Right. So why waste time responding as a human? You don't gain anything. You get nothing for it. Not even a piece of chocolate candy. Which is very good. That was supposed to be funny, wasn't it? But anyway, remember that you take away when you respond as a human. You gain everything when you respond as a member of the next level. Anytime, any circumstance, you're faced with any kind of circumstance, you should immediately say, how should I handle it? If you don't know how to handle it and you're working with your teachers, then say, I don't know how to handle it. Can you help me? Instead of just responding out of habit. Because all of a sudden you have your brain starts wavering back and forth like, I don't know how to do this. It's like that note the other night. I didn't know how to write the note. So the thing to do is write a note saying, I don't know how to write a note to remind you that we're having meatballs tomorrow.
If you don't know how to do it in the right way, then I wouldn't do it.
You see what I'm saying? But that's honesty. And that's showing us that you don't know how to respond in a way, and we can help you in that way. That's why we're here. Okay?
He just asked the ones that retreat what their response was to her saying to the meeting that she'd have to be honest with you, that none of you would be picked to serve on a crew with her at this time. And we were trying to find out what the different responses were, whether it made people go down or already said something I thought was interesting. She said that it kind of made her feel good in a way, but it made her feel like she wasn't so far behind. In other words, she was having to deal with thinking that some of the classmates were ready, and she wasn't. And in a sense, by finding out that none of the classmates were ready, made her feel like, well, maybe she wasn't as far behind them as she had thought she was. Now, Doty said that I guess he was convinced that he was behind his classmates, and so if none of his classmates were ready, that meant he was even further behind than he thought he was. Which is wrong. Which is very wrong. Levodi said something, and Chekhov said something that I could see the error of, and I'm sure it's true. But Levodi said, even though I think I'm exerting a lot of effort, there's a lot more effort that can be exerted. And Chekhov said, I've got to be considerably more aware. Even more I try to be aware, it makes me realize that I'm not as keen or as aware as I'm capable of being. You've got to, when you think in terms of effort and awareness, you've got to realize the type of effort and the type of awareness. You can exert all kinds of effort and have it mixed with, like let's say if you're trying to do your various tasks in the right way, but you're still doing a lot of it in a human way, thinking that you're doing it in the right way, then you're wasting effort. If you're not doing those tasks in next level way. And I think that all of you still waste effort. You still spend effort in approaching things in a human way. Like, I've got to get this task done. But instead of, I want only to do this task in the way a member of the next level would do it. So you ought to examine, in other words, it's not the degree of effort, it's the degree of next level. In other words, don't just increase effort, because a lot of you already spend more effort than you should in human way, and not nearly enough effort in next level. approach to the thing that you're doing. And same thing in keenness. What a human would consider being keen or aware, a lot of times is not the kind of keenness, of next level keenness. It's just like how many times have we said when your eyes go on getting the task accomplished, that takes a lot of effort. Get it accomplished quickly. And get this experiment on the consuming table and so forth. And yet, when you're not doing it according to procedure, you're dropping little procedures here and there in order to get the experiment ready, then that's wasted effort. That's human effort. That's human keenness, not next level keenness. Now, what we wanted to bring this topic up for, we're probably about the time we get the first word out, it'll be the end of this tape, but because unfortunately Cadodian reminded us that it was only 5 minutes here. It seems like we've been on 5 minutes. But